going on, everyone? Whether you're joining us on LinkedIn, or on Zoom, looks like, all right, we're live on LinkedIn, so that's going well as well. Seb's like, oh, I didn't know we were going to start it off talking about Jake's water, but I know you're here for it, though, man. I know you're here for it.
Yeah, I'm here for the water.
I love it, man. Well, look, I'm looking forward to this conversation. For those of you who don't know, Seb and I actually worked together for a while, a few years back. He then went off on his own to do his own thing successfully, and really smart, guy on, what's going on in modern sales technology. And really, this is a conversation, if you follow my content, you know that I'm super passionate about, which is this world of the customer journey and this world of how right now a lot of organizations think sales process first. They think, hey, what do I want to do at each step? And then they say, how do I fit a customer into it? Where the future truly is, and to me, it's not just one customer journey. It's that more and more organizations are going to need to have multiple customer journeys. Oh, yeah. That it used to be that people only bought one way. It was like, I'd call a salesperson, we get on the phone, we do this. And now it's like people want to buy $30,000 software with like click to buy, and I think more and more organizations have to think about this kind of multiple funnels. So Seb, welcome. I'm looking forward to this. I know we set this up a while back. We should have done this in person in retrospect.
Yeah, that would have been more fun. Yeah,
we should have done that in person. The next one we'll do in person.
Of course.
So yeah, man. So tell people a little bit about you. Tell people about Central Metric. I know we've got some deck we're going to kind of like talk through real quick, but tell people a little bit about like what this problem means to you and how you guys have seen this play out.
Yeah. So hey everyone, Sebastian. You can call me Seb. I'm the president of Central Metric. I was a Skaled consultant, and now I'm a Central Metric consultant. And like Jake said, this is something that we see all the time. Back when I was at Skaled, back when I was an SDR, and now in my work today, which is that, we built our sales process based on what we want to happen, the information that we need, and the things that we want to push forward. And we're not considering the buyer's perspective enough. And as we kind of move forward and like more sales technologies come out and the buyer evolves even past where they are today, I think, the companies that don't decide to do an exercise like this and map out what that journey should look like and essentially pave the way that their buyer walks down, those companies are going to succeed if they set this up correctly. With all things equal, same product, same industry, same price, the one with the better buyer journey will always win. This is something we do with almost every one of our clients. And it is kind of, you hear the metaphor, building the plane while you fly it. This is the building the plane part.
Right. Well, look, and I think for a lot of people, we got some folks from Milwaukee. We got Harish who says, go Seb, customer journey over sales process. Alan's calling him from Austin too. What's up, Alan? Yeah, definitely looking forward to this. Canada, Calgary's in the house. Let us know where you're joining us from as well. So we're going to get into it. And again, Seb and I were talking about literally, I think maybe a month ago about topics. And, we kind of came up with this. And like I said, his team's got a really smart way to look through this as a part of it. So let's talk about this. So again, and this is the slide that y'all have put together. What's going on, Danny? So let's talk a little bit about this. This is, I would think this is like pretty common. Like how many of you out there, this looks a lot like your process, right? I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are like, oh yeah, this is it. So tell me, like, when you think about this, like, how have you seen this work or not work?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to start it is like, this isn't necessarily going to fail. I have seen and been a part of many teams where we try to put our prospects in a straight line, and enough of them followed that line that we found some measure of success. So I don't think this is necessarily a negative thing, but I think at best it is neutral, and that the buyers are going to outgrow, and they already really are outgrowing the way that this is set up. Yeah. I think on our side of things, we want things to be aligned. It helps with the technologies that we use, but again, we have to think that anybody and it will be multiple people on the buyer side can enter and exit any one of these steps at any time. And so until we think that way, then we're going to have people that are just dropping out of our sales process left and right. Because
I
what
need one of
happens
those
when they
radio
don't pass through
buzzers
these
that like,
stages?
I want like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I'm like, exactly. You know?
Yeah, we need a
Or maybe like
DJ
a
in
Kevin
here.
Hart version of it. He does a pretty good version of it. So.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, look,
Yeah.
man, I'm with you. I agree 100%. I mean, I think, like you said, I actually think the way that you put it was really smart, which is it's not that this doesn't work. It's just like how I feel like when you manage a team, like a sales org, to the middle numbers, you're like, our average sales cycle is X. You should do X activities. You should. It's.
Yeah.
I feel like it's very similar. Where what we like easy or not very complex, and so we just put people through it and we're like, but it kind of, it works sometimes, but
Yeah.
you know, like you said, it definitely doesn't work, you know, kind of like at scale. And so how do you think about this? You talked about how, like, again, people are falling out, right? People fall out here, they fall out
Yep.
there. Like how do you then think about what that process looks like?
Yeah. So what you're essentially doing is you're predicting that they absolutely will leave this process at any time, and then you're giving them a safe place to land when they come back. Like a simple example could be, somebody requests a demo on your website today. You get on a call with them and you realize that they really haven't quantified the problem that they're dealing with. They just want a shiny thing to add into their tech stack. And so you need to have that time with them to help them be more aware of the problem, discover the actual solutions that they can deal with. And then weeks later, you might finally come back and deliver that demo, but it wasn't what they needed at the time that they asked for it. And we've been doing such a good job of funneling people into a demo or a sales conversation that we catch a lot of buyers off guard. We like to make buyers think they're ready to buy before they actually are. And this is a way to have a more holistic way of thinking and kind of shepherd them through a process that actually solves their problem and doesn't just help you hit your quota.
How do you think about that, Seb? Because there's also buyers that come to you that, are like maybe in this like I'm in the consideration phase, but I didn't know that the problem was important enough, right? So how do you think about those types of people where I think like one of the traps I see some sales orgs fall into is that they weren't qualified. Like, they didn't tell me that they had budget, this, and this, like all on the first call. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like if the job was called information giving, you wouldn't be paid commission. And so I think that there's like a balance here. How do you think about that balance at the beginning stages where someone's like, look, I think I might have a problem. Maybe I haven't necessarily clearly identified everything, but like I'm still influenceable, and not necessarily in a negative way, but in a way that might help me to better, like I didn't know that this was this big of a problem until I talked to you.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. With that, I think there's value in establishing yourself, your personal brand as a salesperson, your company's brand in the market as an expert in this space. So that if someone comes to you asking how to solve, a problem that falls within that space, you can help them redirect and say, hey, this is a common problem. The way to solve it is this. But really, it's a symptom of a much larger issue. We've seen dozens of clients just like you go through this exact same process and ask for the same thing that you're asking for. And we found that for all of them, they needed this extra thing or to do this foundational work before coming into a sales conversation. So I think it just lies in being an expert in your field more than just a salesperson in your field.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And I think a lot of this is, I think, sales right now, a lot of the questions we ask aren't very thought provoking. They're very straight line, as opposed to when you are truly being, like you said, more. I did a post last night about how every salesperson should fire themselves from sales today. And how would you run a discovery process if I said you don't work for that company anymore? Your job is to just consult this person that you have a call with on what's the best solution for them. Like, how would that change your mindset? How much better, like how much like higher quality would the questions be that you ask? And so I think when we look at this, this really quick, I think it doesn't take away from the idea of, look, I can help someone to discover some of this on their own, right? They don't have to explicitly, do you have budget? Well, no, I don't have budget, but, and if you're a junior salesperson and you hear, well, I don't have budget, it's like, you know, how many deals are closed when someone didn't initially have budget? Like I run a consulting firm, you do as well, Seb. You know, Seb, we are usually not budgeted line items, you know, as a part of this. And so it's, you know, there are such things as pains and things that can get people to move forward. So talk about these stats. So talk about this idea of, again, like the evolution. So we're kind of getting into some of like the nitty gritty here of what I should do in the sales process. But, you know, when you think about these stats here that you put together, like what do these say to anybody who's listening, who's either a rep or in leadership? And maybe talk to both if you can. Just, hey, if I was a rep, I'd be thinking this. If I was a leader, I'd be thinking this.
Yeah. So it basically says that your buyers are smarter than you think, and they're doing a lot of things that will bring them closer to you that you cannot track. And there's a big group of them talking about you, and you cannot influence that conversation. And so again, going back to the previous point, like you have to be ready for them when they actually show up. So as a sales rep, assume that your prospect has done some research on whatever it is they're trying to solve. And like you said, you know, turn that conversation into a buyer-centric conversation. Don't try to sell, try to consult that person on the best way to solve their problem. As a manager, I think you're getting into process design and enablement through the lens of like, what sort of content are we showing to a buyer based on what stage they're at, to both help them with the value that they need today and kind of shepherd them along to that next step in their buyer journey. And, you know, I have some more links kind of at the end of this PowerPoint, but essentially this is a problem that I saw as anecdotal. You know, I saw it every day with my clients, and I wanted to see what the larger firms were saying about it. And, you know, to a T, it's pretty much the same thing. You know, the decision is not centralized. There's, you know, upwards of 5 to 10 buyers in some cases. They're doing research before they speak with you. Right. And so, yeah, you pretty much, I think my favorite part here is build consideration and consensus throughout the funnel. So even though you're not selling in the awareness phase, you're prepping them to be sold to. You're giving them the information, the value that they need, so that when they are ready to be sold to, you've built trust, you've built rapport, you've established a problem, and the sale is just a natural conclusion. It's not something that you're forcing on them.
That's right. That's what I think about, is like a sale is an outcome of a well-executed process.
Yes.
Right. Like, and when you do it correct, like it either happens or it doesn't. And that's how I think about the sales process and kind of the customer journey is like, look, I'm going to execute at each step to the best of my ability, or to your point, meeting them where they're at in this quadrant. And then a close is just a logical outcome, or to your point, or they go back into, you know, one of the other buckets. So we had a question come in here that I think is a really good one. With some of these things we're talking about, you know, these types of people coming in at different places, exiting. The question is, are there key questions that would lead you to certain parts of the quadrant from the previous slide that was displayed? So again, when people are thinking, okay, wait, is this person at awareness? I'll give my 2 cents and then I'll pass it to you, Seb. Yeah. What I'm really trying to understand in a discovery process and the questions I ask. Step 1, what are the organizational challenges that are like the top, and it could be departmental challenges. I'm talking to VP of operations. What are the 2 or 3 most important priorities for them to finish out this year and for the next 2 quarters? Having nothing to do with my product, nothing. I just want to know what the top priorities are in the business, because what does that tell me? Is anything that I'm talking about, can it fit in there? Because if it can't fit in there, the likelihood of me getting a deal done is relatively low. And so when I start with these like business questions, hey, John, for the operations group, what are the top 2 priorities, you know, you have going into 2023? and I hear the priorities. I'm like, okay, well, tell me a little more of that. Like, why is that a priority now? What's happening in the business? And so for me, what I'm looking for is like, is one of those mission critical priorities something that I can help with? And if not, I might throw a primer out there. Okay, well, these two are important. Let's say if I sold an HR tech product, I'd say, okay, so how are you thinking about like talent? Like, how does that fit in? Yeah, talent's important. Would you say it cracks the top 3 or 4? Well, probably not until then. Boom. I now know, I'm like, look, these people, this is not a top priority. And so I think a lot of people, like, that's where I focus. Is for me, if there is, like, say, like, if there's no issue or no pain, there's no deal. And if I can't solve one of their top 2, 3 challenges, and unless my product's, $5 or something like that, right? Or runs in the background, the chances that I'm going to be a priority or that they're going to find budget is less. So that's my go-to questions that I ask, is I want to understand those priorities. I remove the concept of thinking about the product that I sell and like tactically, what are you doing around this today? Forget that. I need to know this business to business. What are the top priorities to see if I can fit? So that is my answer to the question. Seb, what would you offer? What would you add?
I mean, I think that was pretty close to perfect, man. Like, straight up, you get on the call and you figure out, like, basically, why are you here? What are you trying to do? And can I help you with it? And if the answer is no, then, like, you don't need to spend an hour on a call showing a demo to get to that point. I would add one thing to it, which is, let's put a cost on that problem too. Not just how important is it, but how much is it hurting you? And how much pain, monetarily is coming out every month, every week, whether it's wasted time, wasted budget, what have you. Because, as from the sales perspective, I'm going to need to match the value of my offering with the cost of that problem, whether it's important to them or not, whether it's the highest priority or the lowest priority. But, otherwise, I think figure out how important it is, what level of priority the prospect wants to put on it, put a number on that. And again, we're now getting into sales as a logical conclusion.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's like you're understanding the pain, and it's like, and then you need to understand how big of an impact, if this pain is solved, or how big of an impact is this already having. Because if it's too small, I might not make a move. All right, so let's talk about these people, process, tech. How do you see organizations, again, kind of using this today, and where do you feel like they're falling short?
Yeah, I think people are putting tech first too often. They think they need Salesforce, but they don't know about what Salesforce is good at. They've just seen people talk about Salesforce, or they think they need some new AI solution, but they haven't come up with requirements yet. I think, as salespeople, we're really good at getting people into these buying conversations. I think we're really bad as buyers. I've seen so many really talented sales leaders, VP level, C-level folks that they buy expensive and shiny tools without deciding what the problem is. And the talk that we just had, how high of a priority is it? How much is this going to cost to fix, and all that. And so these are kind of the 3 pillars that your company has. Maybe I would add content to make it a 4th pillar, like content / community, but you have to use them together, and you have to realize that your revenue organization is a software platform, and your end users are your reps and your buyers. You are designing a process for both of those 2 sides to interact frequently, to get to a point where one side is solving the other side's problem.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think, it would be, and I think part of the reason, Seb, is there's probably a little bit of like, well, everyone else has Gong, so I need to go buy Gong. It's like, how are you going to actually use it any differently than your current call recording and transcription service? Well, look, I get that, but everyone else has Gong, so we.
But it's Gong. It's, come on, it's Zoom Info. Exactly. We gotta pay for Zoom Info.
You gotta pay for Zoom Info. I think that's a good call out there. Okay, so let's talk about these things, because again, I'm with you. I think what a lot of organizations, whenever we say the tech selection process and where you invest, my first question is, where is the bottleneck in the sales process today, or in the customer journey? Where is the bottleneck? Where are your customers getting stuck? Or where's your team having redundancies? That informs it. And I think with a lot of organizations too, the concept of a bottleneck, there actually is no such thing as bottlenecks. There can only be one, right? Like there can only be one bottleneck. And I feel like sometimes, like, you know, we look at like all of these together. And so we solve a lot of problems that candidly don't move the needle for our customer or for ourselves. And so how do you think about like the foundation of these three, Seb?
Yeah, so for process, it has to be repeatable. You have to be able to do it over and over again, and it has to not break with increased volume, which is scalable. And so that's what I focus on when I'm building a process. Is this something that I can do over and over again? And is this something that if we 10x the input, the output would remain consistent or even improve exponentially? You know, we've been talking about it this whole time, but it has to be buyer-centric. This is quite literally a buyer journey. And so everything you're doing is for that purpose. And do not ever forget that.
And
and then you have to make
process too, though, just real quick, Seb, I was going to say for process too, this is the other mistake people get into. I just want to call this out because, you know, we showed the slide in the beginning that had this straight line and you're like, well, that looks pretty repeatable. The point is not, I think sometimes we think if we're not just doing the exact same thing, then it's not repeatable, right? It's the same thing I feel about like email customization. It's like you can have multiple processes that are just if this, then that. Okay, so when I hear this, if I hear this, then that means I go down this. If I hear that, so the process can be scalable, repeatable, but that doesn't always mean automated. And I think so many organizations, especially companies that are doing outbound, think like if it's not automated, if it's not X, if it's not one size fits all, then it's not repeatable. And I feel like it's that mindset, Seb, that's killing people. That's why I feel like so many orgs are missing their numbers, is if the process isn't automated, they feel like it's not scalable and repeatable. And I just think that's, you know, bullshit. And it's why I think we're in this place.
Yeah. No, I think it's the same thought process of like, I want this part to be automated. I want to do this as a seller. It's important to me. And it's not responsive to the buyer, and it's not empathetic of their needs.
So I get that. I do get that. All right. So going into the people. So I just wanted to make that point to everyone that scalability and repeatability is totally possible without everything being automated.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to people, we're thinking about how much work they can do and then what comes out of that work. So their capacity and their output. And then I put here, they have to be subject matter experts. That's across the entire team. Your marketing team has to be experts in what they are talking about. Your sales team has to be experts in problem solving. Your client success team and your account management team has to be experts in problem solving. Throughout the entire journey, you have to be giving value to this prospect in a way that is beyond your solution, because that will increase their likelihood to go with you because you know everything. You are the expert. And then the only other things you should remember about the people are that, one, they are your source of buyer feedback. That buyer feedback is incredibly valuable. It might just be my SDR bias talking, but the fact that you have somebody literally speaking to your customer, who is literally telling them exactly what they need, is priceless from a revenue organization standpoint. And then just remember, like I said earlier, that these are the end users of your revenue organization. And so I'll keep this parallel. When a product designer designs a product and the users of that product don't put their information in correctly, the designer does not blame the users. So when we design a revenue organization and our AEs and SDRs are not putting in the stages or the fields or the stuff that we want in the way that we want, then the blame is on us as process designers. The blame is not on them as end users and reps. We have to enable them, not the other way around. That was my people soapbox that I will always die on this hill.
I think it's the right soapbox, man. It's just a better
Yeah.
way to look at it. I mean, like you said, it's just like a good product person. You know, hey, what's working? How would you think you would click this button? How would you do this?
Yep.
And like, I'm going to go and optimize the process, not say like, well, no, you got to click the button that way. You
Yep.
know, like it's not really how great product works. All right, now let's talk about technology. We got another question too that I want to get to, but let's talk about technology as a part of this as well too.
Yeah, so technology is the kind of infrastructure that makes all this stuff work. So when there is automation, it's the one that's running the automation. And above all else, it gives you the visibility and the predictability into your process. You know, your process and your people could be working really well. If your reporting is not set up correctly, then that does not matter very much. So just make sure that you're creating a system that puts in clean data and spits out clean reports. Because with those reports, those are going to be what you use to improve this process over time. You know, any process that you build is always iterative. You will never reach the perfect process. It is like an asymptote. You can only infinitely approach it. You can never get there. And so just keep that constant improvement mindset in mind.
Write that
down.
Yeah. Asymptote.
A little calculus reference there.
Dude, you're so sweet. That's exactly right. And I think what's interesting, Seb, I'll draw a parallel for you, is let's think about marketing advertising spend. Okay, if you think about what is a sales organization trying to do? At the top of the funnel, generate qualified pipeline. If I'm investing in Google AdWords or LinkedIn ads or whatever, social ads, what am I trying to do? Generate qualified pipeline. When you invest $200,000 a month in your marketing budget, you are spending 10 to 20% of that budget to optimize it, to look at keywords, what's working, that didn't work, this segment, that segment. In sales, do you know how often we optimize our processes? Every, 6 to 12 months maximum?
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. Like, let's look at sales process or methodology, right? People are putting in a new methodology every 3 years. It's like, you're pumping tens of thousands of data points, millions of data points through a system. Why aren't you updating your sequences every week? Why aren't you updating your sales process to eliminate bottlenecks every month or quarter? Like I think sales has got to catch up and wake up that this whole slow iteration and, well, I'm going to implement this process I implemented that my grandpa taught me 20 years ago when I was at Oracle, that's just not relevant. Like, you got to optimize faster. And that's where I think, like, to your point, technology can help us to do this, but it's also a change management issue that even if I get the technology, I just think a lot of companies don't know how to use data to inform rapid decision-making in the sales process because we're so used to it being done in sprints or campaigns versus mindset.
Yeah, completely agree with that.
That's my hot take on it. All right. So the question that we had here was around, it was actually a follow-up to the previous question, is how do you work with multiple stakeholders within the organization that have a say in the product or service that is being used? So I think the question is, how do you, in these processes, right? We're talking about these processes, it's scalable, repeatable, the people are subject matter experts. How do you think about like keeping up with the individual people? I'll let you go, and then I'll hop in with my hot take on it too.
Yeah, I think short answer is that every individual has their own buyer journey, and you have to think about that as you build it. The CFO has a different journey than the director of HR. It has a different journey than the head of recruiting. All three of them are going to buy your HR tech solution, but for three different reasons and at three different paces. And so you, again, going back to who has the burden of making this happen, the one who wants the outcome to happen, which is the person designing the revenue organization. And so since you want this outcome more than anyone else, you have to design 3, 5, 10 unique and individual buyer journeys for these personas, for these products, and for these industries.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly what I would say. Same response, which is that, what I do is I call it separate solutioning. is kind of the name that I've given to it, which is what usually happens in a sales process. It's not, by the way, like the beautiful part about what Seb and I are talking about is, it might sound like a lot more work. It might sound like, wait, this is complex, or whoa. But sales is actually fairly pattern. I guess, I don't know what the asymptote word for that, for the word of patternistic that I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
But after the big meeting, well, what happens in this big meeting, right? So you get your second meeting, sometimes it's your third meeting, and there's a bunch of different people. You got IT, HR, whoever else is at the table. And what happens is you kind of come and you just start demoing. Well, here's like my very tactical advice. The talk track that we have to start an agenda for the big meeting is this. Hey, everyone, I'm really looking forward to the conversation this afternoon. I had a really good call with Sebastian last week. We talked through a couple of the top priorities that he laid out. What I want to do first is maybe spend the first 5 minutes just doing quick introductions, and then and kind of talk through what we recapped and get your take on it. Then we'll spend a bulk of the time talking about what, kind of where we fit into that world. And then after this meeting, if it seems like there's a good fit, we'll set up a separate meeting, IT with you, to talk about kind of the more technical integration. Marketing will set up a separate meeting with you to talk about like how this integrates into your overall brand strategy, to make sure that we've got the right solution, assuming that there's a path forward from here. Does that work for everybody? That's how you set the agenda. And now I go separate solution, like what Seb said. Now, that way my proposal, IT sees, oh, look, they listen to me. Marketing says, oh, wait, look, they listen to me. And so my proposal doesn't just have a bunch of products listed. It's got, hey, IT, how we talked about this. This is how we're going to help with that. Hey, marketing, how we talked about that. So it's really not that. It's the same for every deal. I just know that I've got to go do those extra set of meetings. I tell leaders this all the time. More meetings can actually equal faster deals, because then I'm not waiting for my champion to go chase a bunch of people down. And so, my advice is like, when you do have a deal where you've got multiple, you be the catalyst for change. Be the catalyst to bring people together. You be the catalyst to set the next meetings. Don't sit there and hope and pray that some champion is going to manage the process for you. And then the best part is like, it just becomes part of your new process. I know my process is after the big meeting, I set up a separate meeting with IT, because IT is going to block it at this point. I know I set up a meeting with marketing because marketing is going to block it at this point. And it's just Groundhog Day. So more processes doesn't have to be too, like exponential, more like complexity. You just have to accept it a little bit. That's my like.
And then on the buyer side too, like they want to see that, it feels good if you know that an objection may come up from marketing and the salesperson says, sorry, I already anticipated that objection. I talked to marketing, we got their approval, and we had a meeting last week. And so now what you're doing is you're saying, here's the path. It's already paved, and your friends are down the path too. So come on down.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, and that champion's like, cool, I can go work on my day job stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'll go work on my day job, and then you go and, you're going to help me. It's like, oh God, thank God. Like you said, it just shows like these guys have a process, as opposed to like, let me tell you what never works when you're trying to create a great buyer journey is that when you get to the end of a meeting, you go, great, what are next steps? What do they say? What do they say when you say, great, what are next steps? They say, oh, that's,
I'll get back to you.
Okay. Yeah. Can you send me some information and I'll circulate it internally with so-and-so? All right. Yeah. And so turning it over to them is never the right answer. As you said in the previous slide, you need to be the expert. You have sold this product. You know who needs to be involved. Stop trying to pass the buck. You're not actually helping anybody by doing this. So anyway, Seb, talk me through this slide.
Yes. So this is the money slide. This is where we start to line things up. I will pause myself because I know I've said 3 to 5 different ways that this is not a linear process. And here we are looking at 4 straight lines. And so just thought exercise, imagine that in the buyer journey, again, any persona can leave any one of these 4 points at any time and re-enter at any point in any time. So although we are lining them up, the buyer journey itself is not linear. The cells here are indicating goals for each row. So the buyer journey in the awareness phase, their goal is to identify problems. And so we can go straight down in the awareness phase and start to align our organization around that buyer journey. So if we know the buyer is identifying problems, we are now sending marketing to educate and engage that buyer. The end result of marketing's work is for the revenue, teams, a new MQL or a set of MQLs, people that are qualified, engaged, and becoming aware of their problem. And we use lead generation or marketing automation technology to facilitate those touch points, whether it's a Marketo or a Splash for events or a Zoom for webinar. That's where this technology goes. So in the awareness phase, we now have a team, marketing, which is doing an action, educating and engaging to produce an outcome that revenue wants, MQLs, using technology specific to that phase. And so what we do is we just keep going down the line. In the consideration phase, the buyer's looking for solutions, externally and internally. And so the sales development team is helping that buyer discover solutions and qualifying that buyer to see if they are a good fit for what we offer. The end result is qualified and booked SQLs from the sales development team or from the sales team if you're full cycle. And what we use for that is sales engagement tech, sales love, outreach, mix max, the list goes on and on. And so you can now start to see like the logical conclusion is in play. The next step, we need to make a decision. Sales has to propose their option in those decisions. The outcome is a demo delivered and a closed won or loss. And what we use for that is, PandaDoc, Zoom, some combination of sales conversion or billing or contract sending technology. Then we get into success. The buyer is now finally solving their problem. This part always makes me laugh because salespeople position themselves as problem solvers, but in 99% of cases, when the problem is solved, the salesperson isn't there anymore. They have started the project that ended in the problem being solved, but it's not the salesperson themselves that's solving the actual problem. Just like a small semantic point. The success team is now solving that problem and validating that the problem was solved. One thing I think that software companies don't do a good enough job is freezing their solution in time. This problem came to us, this solution was done. Now we need to tell everyone about it. And we need to find everyone that looks like this client and tell them that we can solve this problem for them. So there is kind of a marketing and outward facing aspect to account management and client success, in my opinion. And then the people in the success phase, what they're trying to do is onboard, retain, and grow this relationship. And what do we use? We use customer success technology, such as Zendesk, ChargeBee, and all of those others. And so this is how we sit down with our clients and start to map the things that need to happen in their revenue organization in order for a buyer to move along this top line of the table here.
Yeah, well, one, there's a lot here that I hope people kind of go back and rewind this, because the way that you kind of talk through this again is, okay, customer, okay, well, where would they be in the process? Okay, would they be here, right? And just think about it like this, right? Like these are the steps that the customer might be at. And again, is your sales organization and marketing and technology organization nimble enough to be able to just like quickly adjust when something is slightly not linear, for a lot of these, it could be, your sales tosses over a bad deal. And so we've got to spend more time in onboarding or something like that. But I think that's it. That's a lot of this, Seb. It's like, when you had, and this would be, Scott Leese would be proud, the argument for having one rep, right? Is I think, kind of what a lot of this comes down to, that the breaking point I see for a lot of these organizations is actually is not the customer, it's the interaction from the internal teams. That they are just, there's no thought given or compensation given toward the customer experience after they exit my stage. So if I'm an SDR and you're one of those organizations that only pays on qualified meetings, well, closes, it closes. They ever see success with the product? I don't care, right? I'm a salesperson. I only get paid on deals closed. What's my incentive to not jam home people or overpromise, Nothing. Whereas when you had one rep, I knew I had to deal with this person and expectations. And so I do feel like another care point that everyone should really think about is, how do I make my handoffs feel amazing and purposeful for a customer? Not because of how we want to do it. Like, I'll give you a good example on the SDR front of a script that, we'll teach SDRs. Okay, I have a call with Seb. I'm like, hey, Seb, like, I really enjoyed this. So based on what you said, you're trying to do this, etc. And here's the key. You got to train your SDRs how to at least talk about your product, because nobody's trying to get qualified. Okay. So, hey, Seb, so here's a little bit about us, based on what you said, I think there's probably, this is going to be relevant, or this is going to be relevant. But let me do this. What I want to do is let me loop in Michael from our team. Michael's actually an expert at fintech companies. I know he's worked on a few. And I think he'll have some very specific ways that he can kind of talk about these two issues in particular. So yeah, I'm excited. Let me set you up. Let's set up time with him for next Monday. I'll get you guys coordinated. And yeah, we can talk through these in more detail and how we might be able to help. How much more excited is that salesperson, or is that buyer? It's like, instead of like, I'm going to loop in my AE and they can tell you more about what we do. And by the way, I've been through this crap enough. You're not even going to talk to them. I'm going to have to repeat myself over and over again because you're too lazy to go talk to them. Or my leader doesn't want me to talk to them, which is even more insane. Right, Seb? So I look at this as like, as an organization, think about on the people process side in particular, are you actually doing a good job of creating a good buyer experience? Because I see it fall down a lot there. Yeah. I don't know if that's something you've seen as well, Seb, but that for me is like the biggest piece of it. So like you said, process becomes before tech. That's so right. Like I said, look for your bottleneck, and then say, oh, we probably need this tool. Great. And don't try to implement 85 tools at once either, right? Implement one tool. It's like how I kind of look at this, Seb? It's like the people are like, I read 55 books this year. Don't remember shit. Right? They read 55 books and they're like, it's better, guys, to read one book and do something about it than to say I read 55 books or I'm spending $2,000 a month on my sales tech, but my team's using 15% of it. So that's my like hot take on that. So Seb, man, we covered a lot of ground here, of ground.
Sure did.
And I think look, man, the points were spot on. I think that every organization out there right now, especially look, and the economy's uncertain, etc. Now is the time. Like, now is the time to reorientate. Now is the time to really start to think about a lot of this stuff. And so we'll take a couple more questions if people have them. If not, Seb, why don't you leave us with maybe some final thoughts? I know, did you have like an audit that you're willing to offer as well too, that you guys do? I think, do we have that?
Do we have that? I mean, we do have a HubSpot audit in our kind of service offerings and like a standard audit. So if anybody does want an audit, I think feel free to reach out to me and we can kind of figure out what that would look like, because as we saw in that last slide, millions of different pieces of technology. So an audit could take 5 minutes or it could take 5 days, depending on what your setup looks like. But essentially, if you have a lot of technology that you're not sure what it all does, and you're probably spending too much on it, talk to me. That is one of the first things we do with every client is, reallocate licenses, make sure there's no redundancies in the process or within the technology, because it is a big bloated mess of technology out there.
I love that. Well, and then go ahead, feel free. You can drop your link in the to your website as well too, if people want to find you. What's the best way to find you? LinkedIn or?
Best way to find me is LinkedIn.
LinkedIn? All right.
Definitely LinkedIn. And I will say one more soapbox before we leave.
Please.
Which is that everything you think you're doing for the recession, you already should have done for RevOps. I have yet to see a single recession-proof strategy in B2B sales that's not just something that a normal RevOps person would already want to do. Yep. We already care about efficiency, lowering our costs, and making sure that our input is smaller than our output. Much more so during a recession, but I'm very pleased, let's say, to see everybody finally focusing on efficiency and not just top line growth.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and it's like, and I use the word, there's efficiency and effectiveness, right? Which is sometimes things that might appear somewhat inefficient, because again, going back to my soapbox, which is automation, and people thinking if something's not automated, it's not efficient. It can be. It can be very, very efficient, and not everything is automated. Like that's,
Definitely.
that for me is a big, takeaway. So for a lot of you out there, and what we'll do too, let me see here. We will, if you DM Seb, or you DM me, we'll get you the slides here as well too. And I hope that this helps some folks. You'll be able to go back on my LinkedIn at any point in time, and you can see this live if you want to share this with anybody in your RevOps or leadership org. But Seb, I think hopefully like a lot of people are kind of walking away from this maybe feeling slightly overwhelmed, like a little bit. I find if people don't leave at least a little overwhelmed, I didn't give them enough. But I don't want it to be debilitated where they're like, oh my God, So I just think for a lot of people, step one is what you had on top, which is map that customer experience. We use a tool internally called Mural, MURAL. It allows you to kind of do drag and drop like whiteboards. And what I find is that just in a few hours, you get some sales leaders in a room, marketing leaders, you can kind of map out the 4 or 5 like most common paths. And, you can have those little variations. Well, if this happens, then we go here. And it just a really very visual tool. So if you're a visual person, check out Mural, mural.com. I just think it's a really easy tool for this. So map your customer journey first, and then worry about Medic or MedPick or whatever else it is that you want to have in the mix. So
or Banter, or Enum, or
it doesn't. It's all similar-ish. I know they'd all say no, it's not, but let's be honest, it's kind of similar. So Seb, appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining. Everyone, thank you for joining as well. And let's see, next Monday is the Monday of Thanksgiving. Yeah, I think we will be live at the same time. So make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to my newsletter. You'll get the Modern Leader newsletter on the day-to-day. Reach out to Seb if y'all need help. Obviously, you guys know what we do at Skaled, anything around sales process optimization in particular. If you need to, look at some of these details, Seb or I can, happy to help you all. So thanks everybody. And thank you again, Seb. Appreciate you joining, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Jake.
All right. We'll see y'all. Have a good rest of your week.